Okay, let's move on to our SQL part, categories of SQL statements. So the different categories of SQL statements we can broadly segregate or differentiate or distinguish our SQL statement into four different categories broadly. And first is DDL, DML, DQL, and DCL. And all of these have different, I'd say, usage. And this particular different usage is what makes them special in their own way. Now there is data definition language where we are basically doing nothing but defining the data itself. When I'm saying defining the data, so you are you're defining how the data would look like. So this business entity ID, person type, name, style, title, first name, middle name, all the different columns that you want to have, all the different uh, data types that you're going to have. The schema of the table itself is, but the structure of the table that we are creating is what we are creating through the DDL part of the language, of the SQL language. So we are using DDL commands for defining the data or the schema of the table itself. Now, DML, data manipulation language. This is the language where this is the part of the language which we are using to get the data into our system, insert the data into the database table, or I mean, insert, update, delete, all of the data. You can say manipulation that we are trying to make is what we do using the data manipulation language part of it. Then there comes a data query language, which one of us has told that they, being a business analyst, they use select statement day in, day out. So that is the part of where we are using data query language and we are using all the select statements. And then there comes the data control language, grant, revoke, and other permissioning, or you can say where you are just doing the admin stuff. Now, can anyone tell me why we have categorized these bits and pieces of the SQL into these four different categories? What is the need? I mean, why can't you just say that SQL is SQL, and why it is defined into four different categories of DDL, DML, DQL, and DCL? Any specific reason? Anything that comes on top of your head? I mean, why would we do this? Why would we go to this hassle of differentiating the SQL into four different kinds? Okay, so let me take four volunteers from our different purpose, Satish. Yes, but I mean, the purposes we have explained, that one is create, one is define the data, the one is manipulates it, another one just queries it, another one provides access on top of it. But the reason we have segregated these is because they are different. All are used for different purposes and we use them for varying number of times. That's also correct. But the key purpose behind this particular differentiation was we have, I mean, SQL is one holistic language, but there are different parts in it, or there are different, I'd say, roles involved. So let's say I'll take four volunteers. I have Satish, Bhargav, me, and let's go with Mayank. So let's say Mayank has access to DDL. So Mayank is my go-to person. Whenever I need to onboard a new data source or a new table, I go to Mayank and I ask him that, can you create a new table for me with this particular schema, with this particular data type, and the constraints and all of this, all of that stuff. So Mayank has access to DDL part of the SQL. And the reason behind that is, if all of us will be able to have that authority of creating table on within our database, then there would exist thousands of table which goes unmanaged, and we would not be knowing who created those tables. And even if we would be knowing, we don't know which are the table which we should persist in our memory or the database and which we need to delete. So there is some kind of filtering that need to have. There is some point of contact that we need to have, that this particular person does this particular job and hence has access to this particular part of the language. So let's say Mayank has DDL, access to DDL, and then I go to Satish and ask that, can you manipulate data for me? That means I'd say that Mayank has created one table, Satish, but I would like you to get all the million records from source A to our particular database. Can you do that for me? So he has access to DML part of it. And then I goes to Bhargav, and I say that, Bhargav, using this data, can you build a dashboard for me where you can show me over the last 10 years what is our gross revenue? So he's gonna query that and he's gonna get me that insights. And then finally comes me, who has access to data control language. Being an admin, I can grant or revoke the access to these respective people to the specific queries. So let's say select is actually a basic query. When I say basic query, I mean if person has access to DDL, he would have access to DQL also. If person has access to DML, he would have access to DQL also. If person has access to DCL, he would have access to DQL. So DQL is the least privileged here. But on top of that, for other DML, DDL, and DCL, we need furthermore privileges, furthermore authority. Different roles have different access level and hence have these different language access to them. DQL will be available to all. DQL is as simple as giving someone a read permission on top of our database so that he can view tables within our database, query them, and get the insights out of it. And that's all. That is something data query language does. So everyone has access to DQL as long as they have access to our database and tables. They will have read permission for the tables. But yes, I would like you to tell this also, that DQL also comes with constraints such that I can give you access to DQL only to certain tables. So let's say there is a possibility, or I can do this, like there exist these, let's say about 5 to 10 tables in a database, and I can ensure that Bhargav has only access to product and product category and product description, all the product related tables, and he won't be even able to see other tables itself. So DQL is restricted in terms of access privileges in that way. When I say in that way, I mean if you are able to view a table, you will be able to query it. You will be able to use DQL on top of it. But if you do not even have access to that particular table, then it doesn't matter. Then you don't even have access to DQL also for that particular table instance. That's how it works. I hope I'm clear. Any questions on this? This is actually an important part. And from the interview perspective, it asks, let's say if you are going for a role of database admin, then this becomes important. And for database developers also, sometimes you get error and you are able to try to figuring out like, hey, why I'm not able to execute this particular query. You will get the permission error, but then at the same time, we should be aware of this, that what exactly we need to ask the admin. Hey, can you give me the access to DML part? Can you give me access to the insert, update, delete, and delete statements? And yeah, we can individually give access to these. Like one would have access to insert and update, but do not have access to delete. That is also possible. Any questions? Or anything you would like me to emphasize on it? DDL person can have access to DCL. Yeah, one can have access to multiple parts. So I mean, there is a chance that there exists. So Jin can have access to all 4. That's not a problem. Yeah, you cannot have too much access. Never. So yeah, you can have access to all of it. You can have access to none of it. You can have access to combinations of these part of it. Good question, Satish. Any other question anyone has? Okay, I'm gonna take it as no. But yeah, I would like to call out Jin. Are you with me so far?
Yep, so far so good.
Awesome. Let's move ahead. So this view does not look good, right? This looks pretty good. But yeah, I think I can. Oh yeah. So this feature actually generally I tell at the end, but yeah, I would like to call it out in this particular specific class itself. So you can export the data, the result set, in order to make your lives easier. Except once you have learned SQL and now you have queried, filtered, and done everything, and you have the required data set that you would like to export. So it's as simple as just right click on this, save result as. Uh, in the format in CSV format, you can save it in like with any name. I'm gonna go with temp and anyway, save it on desktop. And then you can further open that particular CSV in your Excel file. Let me quickly show you. This is how it would look. So that had 1,000 records. This will also have 1,000 records. So 1,001 it says because first one is the header. So yeah, this is how just a second. Yeah, so now it looks like. I hope you got my point. Let me close this. This particular pane you can use to zoom in or zoom out. I think generally 100% works fine. Let's move ahead. So yeah, just to revise the concept, columns are called fields, rows are called records. This particular table result set that we are able to see has 7 records and 5 fields. And now here starts the different SQL statements that we have. So the first we have create database statement. As we said, like once we have created the SQL server, we need to create a database on top of that in which we'll be storing our tables. So how do we do that? Let's see. Yeah. Can anyone give me any name? I mean, database name that we should create. Any name. Satish. Tutort DB. Okay. Command complete successfully. And now the question is, command complete successfully, but where is that particular database? I mean, if it has been created, where is it? We know that database appears here, but it's not appearing here. And the reason for that is we haven't refreshed the list yet. Here comes our new database. Now, let's say I'm gonna, so far so good, right? I think we can. Another thing that we need to remember is in this particular pane at the end, are you able to see this particular part, adventure works written here? So always beware that whenever you're using SSMS, always see here that in which particular database you are. So as of now, I'm in adventure works. Let me show you how does it matter. What I'll try to do is I'll try to query this particular table. And it's giving me an error, invalid object name, sales lt.address. Can anyone tell me why? I mean, any guesses? Notation? Not exactly. Any other guesses? I have to give db.name, db name. That's a good one. Let's try that. Let's try that. Perfect. You are in a different database. That's exactly what I was looking for, Pratiksha. Great. So but also my said was correct. So there is a naming convention or naming scheme that we follow, and that's what we call as a three-part naming. It's called a three-part naming scheme. So if you don't want to be worried about like in which database you are, as long as you are on the same server, you can follow the three-part naming scheme and you will be good. So first part of the naming scheme is called DB name. Second part is called schema name. And third part is called table name. Let me write it for you. DB name, database name, dot schema name, dot table name. If you follow this three-part naming scheme, you don't have to be worried about in which database you are, in which context you are writing, as long as you are there on this particular server. Okay. Now another way, but this is what Mayank has told us, that we have not given the DB name and hence we are getting this error. But let me tell you, what if I do not give this DB name? Do we have to mention all three components every time your adventure works? Can we mention in the beginning that all following varies? Yes, that's what I'm going to tell you. So let's say if you want to tell us, if you want to tell our particular system that hey, we're going to use in this particular database, and then moving forward, we just need to we need not to follow three-part naming scheme inside. Instead, we will go with two-part naming scheme. So what we can do is we can at the start mention use this particular database and then execute. So now when I execute, please note it here that it will change. See, it has changed to AdventureWorks LT. And now the way earlier I mentioned DB name in the starting, I don't need to do that anymore. It works. So we can use this particular way when we know that hey, we're gonna query all the tables in this particular database and all our work is related to a particular specific database. We can just use command. We can use command, use database name, and then we can further execute all our queries with two-part naming convention. We still need two-part because I'll tell you, I'll show you that we will get error. So what if I query this address again, but without this part, first part? Let's see what happens. Invalid object name. And the reason being that it has address in sales LT schema. But at the same time, you can question me. I can show you that without mentioning schema, I can query. So there is this table error log, right? It works fine. I mean, it does not have any records, but yeah, we are able to query the table. 0 rows affected. But the thing is, what if I remove the schema name here? It still works, right? Can anyone tell me why? Sales LT.address does not work without sales LT part of it, but DBO.error log works without DBO. Why? Why so? It's finding error log in whole database, not exactly. Unique name, not to be precise. So the reason is DBO is the DBO stands for database object, and DBO is the default schema in any database. So in any database, when you create a table and does not mention a schema, by default, that table gets created in DBO schema, and we'll be going through that in just future. I'll skip to it and say all are with me, right? Till this point, anyone has any questions? Create databases. I think everyone is good with it. Jin, have you installed SSMS or you're gonna do it after the session?
I'll do it after the session because it requires me to restart my computer.
Okay. No worries. Anyone is doing side by side with me what I'm doing? I think Mayank asked me that question, right? Regarding SQL Server Express Edition. Yeah, Mayank, were you able to install? Or you're facing any issues?
It's in progress. I think.
No worries. All good. Yeah. But everyone is with me so far, right? No issues in following till this point. Let's create this table and we'll understand. So create table statement. This the basic syntax it follows is as simple as create table name, and then basically we need to mention the schema like column 1 data type. If size is associated with that particular data, then we need to provide the size also, and then we can provide n columns. There is no limitation and a semicolon. And this is an example statement which we're gonna run by just now. Give me a sec. I have it. Let me remove this part. Yes. So to be on the same page, the way you comment in any other language, there are different commenting types, right? You sometimes comment backslash, forward slash, and then there is backslash with star, right? So backslash star works here also, and this is basically backslash star is used in SQL for multi-line comments. So unless and until I close it, the following this, it will take anything and everything as part of comment. So let's say if I don't close and I write something, it's taking it as in green, right? Reason being, it's considering it as a comment. So we need to close it, and then it will take it as a statement. Multilingual, multi-line comments can be done in such a way: backslash star, then star followed by star backslash, and in between anything would become a comment. And single line comment would be as simple as just a double hyphen. Let's move on. When you click on execute, it executes the whole script. That means it executes this command and this command also. But if you'd like to execute only a specific command, you can just select it and click on execute, then it executes this only. The way I can show you the difference is I'll make it to adventure works. And now if I select it, it will execute. And to be on the same page, let's see if this one has, it has an error now, but it does not have sales LT address, right? Let's query that. See, now when I click on execute without selecting the statement, it will execute everything. Like this one, use adventure works also, and this. And now when I do that, what we are gonna expect, like what we're gonna get? Can anyone tell me? If I click on execute, what will happen now? Jin says invalid. Executes both. Okay, actually, Satish, you are also correct, but Jin is more correct. Invalid is the reason being, when I use this particular statement, it will switch to AdventureWorks database. And when it switches to AdventureWorks database, it's going to find sales LT.address within AdventureWorks. Since we don't have sales LT schema here, it's going to give us an error, which Jin was saying that it's going to give invalid. Now let's see if that hypothesis is correct. Invalid object name, sales LT.address. Perfect. But when I make it as LT, now what Satish was saying, that it will execute both the statements. It certainly would do that. And the reason we will have the result also is because we are switching to correct database and then querying the correct table from that particular database. Bhargav says there is no semicolon. Actually, semicolon is optional, Bhargav. So let's say even if I do not put semicolon, it's going to execute the same way. I hope we are. Mayank has asked question, how schema is different from table. Okay, so think of it as a table is a table because of data, but within that data exists in which structure is the schema of that table. So what I was trying to say here is there is, let's create the table. Let's move on to the next one and you'll better understand. I'll give you, so we have moved to AdventureWorks LT and one of them, and then we're going to create a table. We're going to create a table student. Create table student. Let's go with RNO, that is roll number, as an int type. Then we'll go with name. Let's take it as character, 10 character name. And then let's take age also as. Get done. And let's execute this. Command completed successfully. Now, can anyone tell me in which schema this table would be created? Default DBO, correct. And in order to see that, what we're going to do is we're going to go here, refresh the table, and see dbo.student exists. Okay. Now, there are two things, Mayank asked that question, right? There are two things that we call schema. This is a schema of this table. When someone asks you what is the schema, or can you give me the schema of the table, he is essentially asking you for the structure of the table. What are the columns? What are their data types? What is the schema of that particular table? That is the schema. But this particular part, DBO and sales LT, is called the schema name. This schema name does not have to do anything with this particular schema of the table. Now, the reason we have schema name in first place is schema name, you can think of it as, in order to better manage our tables within our database, we have different schema name. Can we get details about table fields here? Example, which field is primary key, unique, etc. Who asked this question? Bhargav. Yes, Bhargav, that's a good question. And you can just see here, since we haven't declared any of these any of these column as primary key, you're not able to see any. But let's say I go to customer and it has customer ID as primary key. So you'll be able to see this key icon as against it. And it says PK. Bhargav, does that answer your question? Awesome. So yeah, where are we? Yep. So Mayank, yes. Schema, when we are talking about schema, we are talking about table schema. Table schema is nothing but the table structure, that is the columns and their data types. This particular schema, sales LT and DBO, this is what we call as schema name. This schema name is basically used to manage the access level that we were talking about, right? DDL, DML, DQL, DCL. So what we do is generally, in order to provide, like the way I mentioned that I'll be providing access to only sales LT table and not DBO table. So what I'll do is I'll grant you access on sales LT schema, so that all the table under sales LT schema Mayank can view. In order to better manage access over our tables, in order to better manage our tables across the system. So let's say this particular database, if you will see, you can just read the schema name and you'll be able to tell to what it is related to which entity it is related to. So if you remember in our normal coding, we have classes, right? Classes define an object. Like if this is a person class, this is a business class. So if a person class, it means it will have all the objects related to the person itself, like his age, name, address, ID, employee ID, all of that. Similarly, you can think of it as schema name here. If something belongs to person schema, then it will be all the information related to person. So let's say person.business entity. So it will have all the business entity related information with respect to person. Human resource.shift. So human resource, it will have shift related information with respect to human resource. Job candidate information, employee pay history. Then production, we have production review. Production.product review. It will have product review related information. Just by the looking at schema, you can tell that what kind of data or what kind of table will be associated with it. So schema name is just for better manageability of the tables and providing access. Schema name, and then the schema of the table is the actual schema or the structure of the table in which we'll be holding the data. So let's move ahead and see what is our next statement. We go into the insert statement, and it's as simple as insert into table name, and then we provide the different values which need to be provided into different columns. We can provide the column names explicitly and then provide the values, or we can provide the values directly. But one thing that we need to take care of is when we are providing the values, we need to provide them in the exact order of the schema itself. I'll give you an example, and then in that you'll be able to understand better like this. So let's insert into student 1, Kapil, 30. So the reason we are doing this way is, and we are not mentioning the column name, is because we are providing in the exact particular schema. Let's say roll number would be 1, name would be Kapil, age would be 30. Let's execute it. 1 row affected. Let's see if that is there in the data. 1 Kapil 30. Correct. Now let's say you want me to write this RNO name age, and this time we're gonna enter to Ajay 15. Let's see if this would also work. Any doubts? Both, I mean, you can mention the column names also and then the values, and without the column name also you can insert the values. But the difference between this is, let's say now this time I'm getting a bit fancy. I say that I'm gonna add age and then name. Okay. And this time what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make it roll number 3. Age would be, let's say, 17. And name would be Mohit. Actually, I'll show you the other way around first. If I keep the schema same, if you will see, I've changed the column order here, but I have not changed it here. Now let's see what happens. Conversion failed when converting the varchar value Mohit to data type int. So what's happening here is it detects that I'm trying to enter in age, I'm trying to enter Mohit. Since age is of int type, I cannot enter a character type data inside it. Correct. So since I changed the order here, I need to change the order here as well. Now, the reason I mentioned was that you do not need to mention the column names is because essentially or initially we were inserting data in roll number, name, age, or name, age in this particular sequence only. And since the table is in this sequence and we are giving the values in the sequence, it was taking it up. But as soon as we change the sequence, we need to change the sequence here also. Okay. And as soon as we change the sequence here, it works just fine. So whenever you want to mention the sequence of columns of a table or sequence of schema of a table, always ensure that the values you are entering is as per this schema and not this schema. This is the sequence of columns that will be followed in the insert statement and not the inherent one. But when we remove it, the inherent one is followed. And I'll show you just now the proof of that. Now I'm trying to enter in age Mohit again, right? Let's see what it says. We should ideally get same error. And we are getting the same error. So always ensure that whenever you are entering data and if you're mentioning the column names explicitly, enter the values in the same order. Otherwise, do not mention the column name and enter the values in the order in which the table column exists. I hope that's clear now. Now, let's actually, no one has asked me what does this star mean and why I'm doing this. I'm a bit curious why no one has asked.
In order to select all the columns.
Who said this?
Hari.
I'm sorry, name. I'm not able to see a name. Can you please tell me your name? Suganya, yes, correct. In order to select all columns, yes, that's a correct answer. And yeah, Mayank was asking, can we pass null to particular column? Yes, we can. I'll show you that also. So let's say I'm gonna go with, I'll say that rule number 4. And I'll give you null. And then what was it? Let's say his age is 18. I don't have the name. Name is I'm providing as null. And yeah, voila, it's done. Mayank, that answer your questions, right?
Yeah, right.
Awesome. Star is used for all columns. We all know that. So just to be on the same page, Jim, did you know that why we are using star?
I just know.
Sorry?
I just got to know.
Okay, awesome, perfect. So the reason, so think of it as whenever we say star, it means all the columns of that particular table. So this was something that I was actually about to use it later, but yeah, it's good that it came up now.